Pretty good life.
He does have a good life. He's very spoiled.
It does sound spoiled.
Yeah.
But he's pretty cute.
He's rather cute. And
He
he's
has
wearing
such a serious face.
a bow tie today. So
He's dapper.
but yeah. It's like a little
Well, welcome everybody to today's Solid Ground live stream for February 20th. Is it February 20th? That's crazy. And glad you're all here. And I think we are live, although everything's just slow right now. So
It says live on my end. I see the little red.
well, I'll presume live. And so David, you got the blurb.
I've got the blurb. So Solid Ground is a peer support community for anyone concerned about the imposition of critical social justice, CSJ, aka woke, and or COVID mandates in their workplace, university, children's school, or community. We offer weekly online peer support groups in which members share ideas, thoughts, and support for how to navigate the impact of these ideologies and answer the question, where do we go from here? You can join one of our groups for only $5 per month. And to find out how to do this, join our community and please visit solidgroundsupport.com. And just a note as well, Solid Ground does not provide psychotherapy or legal advice, and nothing we do should be construed as such. Bang.
I think that the blurb should always be read in a nice British accent. And maybe preferably while wearing some kind of hat. So next time.
Right. Okay. What have I got?
bowler hat.
Yeah.
That means that you guys get to do your best British accent next time round, then I'm assuming.
Oh,
Well,
I can do the Cockney. Oh, I got a big nose. Oh no, I got a big nose. I can't do it.
I'm terrible with accents. I can't do an accent, but I'll try. I'll make a fool of myself. I'll do it.
Everyone seems to do it. Americans often do the Dick Van Dyke accent, don't they? From Mary Poppins.
Oh. So, accents aside.
Anyway.
So today we were having a conversation about well, we talked about a number of things. So we talked about moral frameworks, but then we got into this sort of meandering discussion about some other stuff. So Jody and I had a conversation with Benjamin Boyce the other day, and one of the things that came up was the idea of expertism and relying on experts to make our decisions for us. And I feel like that's been something that I've been thinking a lot about. We've got a lot of rampant credentialism. People are outsourcing decision making and also having coercive major life decisions being forced on us by other people in a lot of different ways, I feel. And so I think this is a really big topic. There's a lot to chew on. And so that's not a really great prompt, but does anybody have any thoughts right off the bat about that?
Huge topic. I mean, well, right off the bat, I'm just thinking COVID.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Trust
the science.
Trust the science.
Mm-hmm.
And then the notion of scientism.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like it becoming kind of this religion that's, I mean, again, psychology of totalitarianism. Matthias Desmet talks about this, the scientism, and how it arose out of the Enlightenment, like this blind adherence to materialism without any regard for context. And I think that connects to the woke as well. I could probably spout a PhD thesis about how the woke does the same thing, but I won't. So I apologize if for those of you aren't making the connection, but it's there. And it's the same thing with woke in terms of like trusting the experts, trusting the science. You know, when I first started at Smith, I was like, I'd never heard, I'd been in New York City, but I'd never like heard about this stuff before, like maybe vague glimmerings of it. And then I got to Smith and they were like, you're white, you have privilege, like they blah, 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 blah. And I thought, that doesn't sound right to me, but these guys have PhDs and they've been in higher education for a long time, and this is my alma mater. Like I kind of like, I deferred to the institution,
Mhm.
even though something about it didn't quite feel right. And there was, of course, then you add on to that the level of coercion that you're not supposed to talk about it. So and that's me, and I'm kind of like a fringe dweller, I guess. And so I was even susceptible to that. And there's something about power too. Like if some I- humans are so complicated, like there's something about power, like the credentials, right? The PhD, the Smith College versus, I don't know, Holyoke Community College. Like if a guy came up to me and was wearing like, well, I'm not going to use myself as I'm not a good example, but like, I think a lot of people give more credit and expertism to people based on how they look, based on like, do they have the letters after their name, that kind of stuff, versus somebody who actually might actually be an expert in this topic, but they were self-taught, for example. Like I think about Einstein a lot, just driven purely by curiosity. He didn't have any letters after his name. And luckily, in my opinion, we listened to him. So I think there's a lot going on here that's not just about credentialing and
Mhm.
letters. It's also how we perceive people to be or it's the authority stuff. Like who's the authority and who acts like they're the authority.
Yeah, I think there's a lot there. That's a really good observation and good breakdown. And it does definitely, there's a lot of overlap, I think, with this woke stuff. I mean, this way that it's sort of assumed, this assumed framework that we never had this explained to us, how we're going to start thinking like this, and who are the big thinkers who brought this new evidence-based framework to light that we should apply in our own lives. It was just laid on top of everything else and assumed, and it's like, because we said so.
Yeah, and there was also an element of
Right.
fear though too, that made
Mhm.
people, when I think people get afraid, we naturally are looking to some authority.
Mhm.
We're kind of trained. It's like deeply ingrained. We like in a crowd, if like there's a loud noise, people like look, what we look to each other. If somebody starts running, we just all start following that person. Like we don't know that person knows where they're going, but it's kind of like this, it's almost a primal thing too. Like when we're afraid of a deadly virus,
Mhm.
we want somebody to come in and tell us what to do so we can assuage our anxiety and our fear. Sorry.
I think that's absolutely the case. And I think it's just part of, I think it's a normal part of the human experience. I mean, if you think about it, when if you have a infant and it has a high fever and you're frightened, you call your mom and ask what to do. It's like no matter how old you get, you still kind of want a parent, someone you can turn to, someone who offers good advice. It could be how to fix your heater, how to fix your car. And especially when things are scary, and those early days of COVID, none of us really knew what was going on. I mean, I was completely terrified initially, and I'm the opposite of a germaphobe, but I was petrified. And so, yes, I just wanted somebody tell me what to do. How do I keep myself safe? And then later, all the contradictions, I started saying, wait a second. Like, I think that people are saying things to us that aren't true, and this is getting ridiculous. But initially, my gosh, in an uncertain situation, yeah, you look to somebody who looks like they know.
I was just thinking as well about I don't know if they've done a study with like educational attainment or IQ, but there's definitely research out there that shows that even though you might be, I don't know, more educationally endowed or endowed with a higher IQ, you're still as susceptible to bias as someone lower down the scale there. But you are much more adept at post hoc kind of rationalization. So you've got a very good way of tying together why it is your argument makes sense from the evidence that's there. You can support your hypothesis more skillfully, or there's more routes to do that. So in a weird sort of way, I don't know. I wouldn't say you're more biased, but you're certainly predisposed to making things complicated and sticking rigidly to your thought, even completely unconsciously. I don't know. Experts who become experts in particular fields. I mean, imagine being the sort of, I don't know, the chief chief's probably not a good word, the expert in virology, and you get the call and you go, right, we really need you to be telling us now what to be done. I mean, what happens to that person? Do they kind of go, right, well, I'm the best man for the job and this is how we do it? My moment in the sun. I don't know.
Sorry. Really good point, like about having the skills to like support your argument, right? Like rhetoric, like introduction to composition, you know, like you have, if you're college educated, but you also have access to language. You have not just, I'm not going to say more facility with language, because anyone can have facility with language regardless of education level, but I think there probably is a correlation, and you have access to that particular special language, the language of the expert. And this also is occurring with woke ideology. We touched on this at one other live stream, but like if you're talking in this really specialized language, that again gives the appearance, at least, that you know what you're talking about, and I can't possibly, like, I don't even know what words you're using, so obviously I'm going to defer to you because you know, you're the expert. So that's another power. It's like a power imbalance, kind of like deferring to that person.
Just listening to you there, Jodie, makes me think of, I think Jordan Peterson talks about language being he talks about when zoologists were trying to look at zebras and looking at how they moved around in herds, and they went to Africa and they were viewing them from far back on some chairs, and they realized they were trying to write observations down of the zebras and they really couldn't tell who was moving where. Oh, they'd lose that person. So they drove up their jeeps to the herd and put a red cross on one of them, and then drove back and thought, right, okay, now I can make my observations. And a pack of lions came in and automatically coordinated themselves to that one zebra that had a red cross on, automatically, because they could find the zebra that stood out. So you talk about language, and Jordan Peterson makes this excellent point about how language is our camouflage, it's our stripes, because to lift your head above the parapet weakens other people within the herd, or even maybe the herd goes, right, you're the guy you get out. Like, if you're going to have a difference of opinion or you're not going to use the right language, you can go over there and the lions can have you, type thing.
Wow, I think that's a really brilliant illustration. That is so interesting. And I've thought, like, this whole time during COVID, we've had this, it's been like this narrative and counter narrative. And there's been this tendency for people who thought that the COVID measures were all, government overreach, to call the people who are going along with the measures sheep. And so that phrase, you're hearing that so much, the sheep. I've thought about that a lot, and I think that it's interesting how that's used in such a derogatory way. To be a herd animal is to be looked down upon in this framework, in this sort of mindset of, I'm a critical thinker, I think for myself. You people who follow the herd are stupid, or are mindless, or are just doing something dumb. And yet, when we have like the root word for gregarious and egregious is the same Latin root. To be of the herd is to be gregarious. To be egregious is to be outside of the herd, to be offensive to the herd. And so when you look at it from this point of view, it is a good thing to be a herd creature, to be a human who fits in well with other humans. And I think that at its core, it's like that noise in the crowded space, like you're saying, Jodie. You look around and you say, what was that? Somebody might know what that was, because I don't know what it was. And I'm going to look to other people for a cue as to how concerned I should be about this, and then what I should do about it. And it's a protective thing. And it's something that's quite beautiful about our nature, that we want to be among others, be liked by others, like others, protect them, and be protected by them. And so it's this beautiful aspect of humanity that's been co-opted and exploited by people who are looking to drive people towards their own selfish ends. It's a Machiavellian like takeover of something that's actually quite a lovely aspect of humanity. And um, like that zebra with the, and I like how you say zebra, that's cute. But the zebra or zebra or whatever, with the with the X, it's like if you are the expert, right? You're like the virologist who gets the call. I think that it's so common for people to have this sense of imposter syndrome and checking themselves and like, who am I to be the one speaking about? And what would one do? I think that what many people would do is to look back in towards their professional group and orient themselves with a safety net behind them of consensus. And so therefore you get somebody who's highly qualified to be making the call that would be significantly, critically thought through, but with that human, impulse to then check the herd. And who's their herd? It's their scientific community or their professional network or whatever. And so you're going to see consensus just trumpeted without much critical thinking. And then everybody else is looking to them for cues and they're getting more of the same. So it seems like you end up with this like professional myopia. Anyway.
Yeah, that's interesting. We do that, don't we? We look for our, yeah, it's so weird how so many things use natural impulses that are deep within us. I guess that's how they work. There's the woke stuff too, like the co-opting of our moral compass. Like we want to do good. We want to do the right thing. So like it kind of, we don't want to be bad. It's all, they're all inside jobs. The more you think about it, they're like all exploiting, or as you put, hijacking and co-opting things we already naturally do. Even the conversation with Neil about the marketing, the BLM, like exploiting human behavior. And so, because we don't want to cast out these parts of ourselves, because like you said, these are good things. These are protective things. We need them. So it's not like we need to reclaim them somehow. And what concerns me is that we, because of this need to be with the herd, or, and as you point out, a lovely and good thing to be with our people, basically, we're social. There's a danger also of, like, for example, with COVID and mandates, like, you stick your neck out, like, hey guys, I think we should be questioning this. And your herd is like, what? Like, you're crazy. Like, you were good on the woke stuff, but we think you're crazy now, right? And then like, you kind of get cast out of that herd. And then you go and like, I think the tendency is like, okay, now I'm finding my people over here. And there's almost an overcompensation where you don't even really know if you can trust this other group of people, but because this particular thing, you've been ousted and you feel exposed, you can almost hook in stronger to this herd than maybe what is healthy for you. And then you find out, and later, like, oh, actually, these people weren't actually very trustworthy at all, and this wasn't a good idea. But at the time, it like the feeling of exposure and the need to find a group or a safety network is so strong, it almost overrides everything. And I'm not just talking, like, I'm talking about all of us, not just people who are like, oh my God, I need to get, I'm terrified, I'm going to die of COVID. If I go to the supermarket, I'm going to die, like that. And doing everything. And then, kind of clinging to that. Like the opposite is also true of like, I'm going to go find people who are, against that stuff. And I'm going to hook into that. And it kind of like, it really fucks us up. Like it really, what is it? It disenfranchises us from our, I don't know, I can't explain it, but it fucks up that natural thing that we need. It makes it go wonky somehow. And like this, sorry, I'm thinking about like the need for institutions too. And this is expertism. Like the institutions have failed us. And yet we go on creating more institutions thinking, well, this time will be different, but maybe we are no longer, our antenna or whatever have gotten so broken and messed up that institutions are no longer ever going to be, at least in this environment right now, like they're so easily this like high level of cynicism and corruption, it's very hard to believe that just building more institutions is going to solve the problem, because that's how this problem, the institutions are literally what created the problem in the first place.
Well, and the
Partially
size of them,
the
right?
size of
I
them
mean,
and the
the
fact that they're
size.
centralized, they're
Mhm.
very fragile, right? They're
Mhm.
very, very fragile, as opposed to like low level networks, which I tend to think are stronger, but people don't look at those as being strong because they're not, they don't have the flashy website or
Mhm.
whatever. The letters, like it's, so again, we just keep flocking back to what we know, but I think that's dangerous.
Well, and I think that something about what you're saying there about the institutions, that this is when something becomes so large, and we have this mass aggregation and this centralization of like a number of people, a number of human interests, right? Human, whatever, maybe it's education or healthcare or whatever it is. We have this sort of centralization, mass aggregation. And as these entities grow, as any entity grows, it seems like whatever its original purpose was becomes subsumed with the need to self-perpetuate. And so as we become obsessed with self-perpetuating, we, by virtue of that need, we dehumanize the individuals who are dependent on that system. And so it becomes a psychopathic entity. And you know what I'm saying? Like, does that,
Exactly what you're saying.
just
Unfortunately.
And so, yeah. And so it's like, now this is a thing that is just existing for itself and to gobble up more space for itself. And it's no longer, and yet we still have this like human tribal impulse to look to the elder or to the authority or whatever, and see that as somebody who has our own interest in mind. Like Jennifer's talking about, you call your mom, or maybe you call your aunt who has raised 3 kids when you have a question about your child or whatever it is. You look to those you see as authorities. But if you're looking to, I don't know, like Rachel Levine, like what kind of advice are you going to get? Does Rachel Levine really care about your health? And this, anyway, see what I mean? Like these big entities, they no longer care about you. And so they're not going to give you advice for you. They're going to give it to you for an aggregate of whatever, and whatever their interest is for that aggregate.
Or AI algorithm or whatever. And at the same time, we have this like flattening of our own development and self-actualization as individuals, which makes us even more vulnerable to flocking to the expert, right? Like it's like, I don't know, I think about all these kids, they're all watching all the TikTok, like all the same, they're consuming it's like this flattening of culture and lack of diversity. And it makes us like almost more susceptible to this centralization. It's like we're being trained. So we have a lot of things going on that make us susceptible to flocking to experts, institutions, so on and so forth.
Jennifer, you look like you're deep in thought.
I'm thinking, sometimes the experts themselves are being paid behind the scenes for, like, the sugar industry paid scientists years ago to do science that pointed the blame towards fat for health problems and obesity. And we know now that that is not the case. And now we have, I don't know what the percentage is, but now this huge number of people in the United States have type 2 diabetes. This was not a thing when I was growing up, everybody having type 2 diabetes. It's extremely common now. And this is a case where the scientists, people that we would trust about what is healthy and what is unhealthy to put in your body, were not acting with the public's interest in mind. And that is really scary to me, because I have to admit, I like the idea of there being all these institutions that are looking out for the people, and that when we want to know something that we are ignorant about, we can turn to them. I love that idea, but I don't think it's true. I don't have faith in institutions anymore. And that's a feeling of loss for me.
So you're talking about a more direct form of corruption rather than sort of a natural byproduct of human interaction and growth and stuff. So you're pointing out that, yeah, we actually have capture, like institutional capture and real corruption behind the scenes.
Yes, very much so. And I know what you guys are saying, like organizations can all start to exist just to exist. Their purpose becomes to perpetuate themselves. That's very true. But then there's something else going on too within our institutions where they've all been captured by, this woke ideology, which has basically removed the last vestiges of faith that I had in institutions.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's sad for me because, it's K through 12, the universities, most corporations, healthcare, the mental health field, churches, which to me is still kind of the saddest. Not all churches, but most mainline churches have been captured. And it just shows, my gosh, if the church can't resist that, I mean, what happened to, being in the world, but not of the world? I don't think you can be any more of the world than having a drag queen come in and read something to the children, which is what one, I think, Methodist church did.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's a loss of, it's a loss. It's a loss of anchors. Like these have been our anchors. A lot of us grew up inside and around and of institutions, and to think it's almost unfathomable to imagine life without them. Like, how would we function? So much of our culture and society is based on having institutions. So what is the alternative? It's really scary to think nobody's coming for us. Like nobody's, perhaps it really is just us, like, I don't know. I think there's this,
like the adults aren't coming into the room to save us from this.
Yeah. And you think, we talked about this too with Benjamin, didn't we?
I think so.
So what is we talked about, he talked about a universe, like now I'm getting into the moral framework, but the need for me to find an anchor, I realized finding an anchor that's not of this world is really, really important. And when I say not of this world, I mean not of something that's like more eternal, and it could be religion. I don't know. I mean, I personally think the religion, like our move into materialism and away from religion, is partially responsible. And now we have the woke stuff taking over religion, which makes things even worse. But that doesn't mean you can't have a personal connection to God, or let's say you're an artist, like your art, right? Like something that feels like it's not dependent upon this world, something that's transcends even your own generation, or like it's not like, and to me what that looks like is going to writers, like people that are living or dead, like looking at art, making art. That's just what it looks like. And beauty, and for some people it might be nature. Like there are eternal things like that have been here for thousands of years and will continue to be here for thousands of years regardless. And so I think it's important for people to hook into that, to have some kind of faith, because these, like Jen said, otherwise you get really, really fucking depressed.
Well, it's really interesting because that seems like a contrast between the universal and the like democratic consensus, like the contemporary consensus versus the universal truths. And those two things seem like they might have something in common, but they also seem like they could be completely different.
What do you mean?
Like universally transcendent, like the threads that hold everything together. What is, you talk about going back into literature and finding these things that are currents, that are not current like contemporary, but like a current, like a thing that runs through. Like what's the uniting forces and what are the underlying truths? And tapping into that on an individual level, which is sort of individual, but also sort of not. And so it's like,
right.
It's kind of a head trip.
A strange phenomenon of feeling it's like it pulls you away from the people you're around in the moment.
Mhm.
It brings you closer to humanity in general.
Yes, that's,
Weird,
yeah,
like,
very well said.
confounding thing. And unfortunately, like, that's what I mean about this. Like my kids are reading less. I've got to get on that. Like we're being pulled into this. It feels like with the digital stuff and the technology, like it's working against us and our ability to find those anchors, because it's kind of just dragging us back into the current place. And it's hard to resist that when it seems like our whole lives are kind of dictated by the internet. But there is a lot to be found on the internet too. I mean,
I was going to say, I was just thinking as you were talking, Jodie, about when do you feel these moments? When do you feel these moments in which you're? I was just thinking about coming out of the cinema, having watched a film that just sort of felt like it altered you a little bit. You come out, and so if it's in the middle of the day or the evening or whatever, like the world looks a bit different, or the world seems a bit trivial, or you just kind of want to stay in that moment. It's almost as if you've stumbled across something, or it's resonated with you on a level. And I think, like, talking, you mentioned as well, I think in a live stream previously, about how do we resist some of this stuff. And it's thinking about art, it's thinking about the things that are deep within us, that are, you know, I think Camille Paglia, is that how you say her name? She talks about like art and history and all these things that are so wonderful and magnificent about human beings that connect and unite all of us. But we've let go of that to talk about these shallow, superficial categories of identity. So that's what I'm trying to think about at the minute, particularly in sessions on campus, when for some reason talking about something like personhood always just seems to come down to hollow ideas about who you are in terms of your skin color, your sexual preferences, and you know what you got between your legs. And it's just like, Christ, we can do better than this, guys, can't we?
yeah, Camille Paglia, she talks about this song. I love her little bit on Under My Thumb, that Rolling Stones song. She's like, come on, it's a fucking masterpiece. It's a masterpiece, this song. And it's like, yeah, I get it. Like, it's misogynistic and this and that, but it's like, it's so good. It's so good. And it's real. It's like, that's our human condition. Like, it is a reality. And it's, I don't know, like I just love that bit that she does. And I feel that way about Billie Jean too. Like I hear the song Billie Jean and I'm like, okay, I get it. Like I'm not supposed to be listening to Billie Jean. I was told that by a
But
student.
it's fantastic.
But I'm like, my body doesn't know that. My body's just like, Billie Jean. Like, it's a masterpiece. I you know, like, are we supposed to cut that off for the sake of this? Like, yeah, I get it. Like, maybe this person was a terrible human being, but the song itself, it has to transcend him in some way. I mean, if you're truly tapped in on that level as an artist, like, nobody's going to remember Michael Jackson. Like, but if anyone who hears that song, even if they don't know who the artist is, like,
well, and on that note too, like terrible human being, like what that concept is something I was just talking with my kids about this, about good people, bad people. You know, we were having this conversation and I said, even if you are a good person who does good things most of the time and tries to orient yourself in a way that is loving and truthful and honest and positive, you're going to have bad things about you too. There's going to be times when you do something wrong. It doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't take away the good. And even if you are a person who does terrible things in your life and awful things and has committed horrible harms on other people or etc., there are good things about you too. There are probably things that you have done that are beautiful and good. And that it's that black and white thinking, you know? And so like Michael Jackson, you know, there's a question there, right? I'm not going to finish that sentence necessarily, but
it's a setup. This like I'm a good person thing, or I'm a bad person.
Yeah.
It's not about, and it's woke too, because it's like somehow it's a fixed thing. It's not. It's behavior. It's your behavior that matters.
Behavior,
and not like, and even your behavior, like you did something when you're 12. It's not. That doesn't mean that's who you are now. Like everything's so fluid and contextual, and that the woke ideology is a complete denial of that.
Yeah.
Just thinking about connection, our connections to transcendent things like music, like art, like history, and all of those things. Could you almost argue that whoever Michael Jackson was, he wasn't just coming up with Billie Jean himself. He was also connected to something transcendent, and that's good. So you're not judging Billie Jean just on Michael Jackson. You're judging it based upon the fact that he was someone who had all of his influences based upon things previously, about what he heard, something that made him go, okay, this is really resonating with me. I'll put that bass line down. And it turns out that bass line would have been influenced by all these other things that came before him. So to kind of isolate it as Michael Jackson's legacy and all the things that happened with him, you'd say, well, that's stupid anyway, because his music is stepping on the shoulders of, if you like, the musicians that came before, the art that came before anyway.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Yeah, it not only is it influenced by these things, and so therefore kind of a product of that influence, but it also then goes on to impact other people in certain ways. And so it becomes something much larger than itself. It becomes where it grew from, its inspiration, the person who put it together, and the people that it impacted in a larger way. And just because we now have a different take on things, to go back and think that we can like just come in and memory hole that, just pluck it and throw it in the incinerator.
Scalpel, like
yes.
Let it out.
This is gone.
Yeah, that's the woke stuff. That's materialism at its essence, right? Like dreams aren't really dreams. Like they're like just like this neuron speaking to this neuron and firing randomly, and like it can be that everything's reducible to a single static thing. That's not like, oh my God, if you think about the universe, like I think it's a control thing ultimately.
Sorry about my dog. I'm gonna mute.
I think it's a control thing. Like I think it's like, my whole thing is I think it's like fear of mortality or something. Like if we can just figure it out and reduce everything, and even our sexuality, put it in this box and label it, and like every little thing can get labeled and like plucked out and explained, then we will have it figured out. We will live forever.
Yeah. At least my neurosis will disappear, because I can just box it up and go, I don't need to think about that anymore. It's like, sorry, you're gonna have to think about that for the rest of your life. Maybe not in that way.
I figured it out. Now I can relax and have fun.
It's anxiety.
And I can control the world. I can silence everyone who might say something insensitive or sent in any way. Did you guys see the books? I don't know how to say his first name. Roald Dahl.
Oh, yes.
What's happening with
oh my gosh.
Well, something's happening, like they're rewriting his books or something.
They're taking things out. They have sensitivity readers, not to sound too Orwellian. And they're removing things from the text, like such as the word fat, because that might offend somebody. And what are they called? The Oompa Loompas or something, or something.
Oompa Loompas,
yeah. They're making them gender neutral. They're persons instead of, I mean,
I didn't see that.
This to me is so terrifying to alter book. I mean, they could go back and do anything. They could go back and pull things out of Shakespeare. They could dismantle the Canterbury Tales, because that's no longer fit for modern readers.
Well, this is an argument to buy books and keep them.
Oh, yes.
Huge children's library at my house. I've been working on, like, I want children to have access to these books.
I saw that.
Sorry, go ahead.
They even took the word black out of one of those books, and it wasn't being used about a person. It was like just a description of one of Roald Dahl's books. They took the word no barking dog, black out of a description, because it was used in a negative way, like something was black and huge and monstrous or something. So they removed the word black.
Wow. Like blacklisted or something. I've heard that, like not supposed to use that, or like I'm feeling pretty black today. I'm feeling like everything's just black because I'm depressed. Yeah. That reminds me of, like, in the 90s, the word lame, like
can't say that now.
So lame. Like I used to correct people. I was at Smith in the 90s, like, but that was the extent of it. It was like, that was the worst of it. it was weird how it like came in queer theory and then it like disappeared for a while, and then well there was Alan Bloom closing the American mind, like that whole thing happened, and then Camille Paglia saying her bit, and then it kind of like it was still confined to academia, but it was like a little bit made an appearance into the popular culture, and then it kind of retreated, and then it was like, oh, it's not quite, the culture's not quite ready yet. We're gonna wait until we have the internet. Like we're gonna like regroup, and now the internet's here. Now,
Yeah. Yeah. You know, Winston Churchill used to refer to his bouts of depression as the black dog of depression, which I think is a wonderful way of describing it. What would you say? What would you say now? You couldn't say the black dog of depression.
I think the animal charities would have a problem with dog as well. So you'd be suing on both ways.
Yeah, you'd have to just distill it down to something really sterile, like just the bleak feeling of depression. Can you even say bleak? Is that offensive somehow? Probably.
It's the destruction of poetry and good prose.
Mm-hmm.
It destroys art. It destroys creativity.
It's ones and zeros.
Yep, it is.
It
totally is.
Everything down to the ones and zeros.
You guys want to read some of the chat? Let's see what we've got in here.
Yeah.
So Rib Rascal says, greetings, variants. That's cute. Mark Cavendish and Rib Rascal are both excited to see Jody. Fire Pestle says hello. CNY Photo Video says hello, everyone. Hello.
Hi.
And let's see, I'm just going to scroll through a little bit. Friar Pestle, ruled by unelected credentialed experts just sounds like a gatekeeping oligarchy that short circuits the rule of law. But what do I know?
World Health Organization, anyone?
Yeah, WEF, anyone?
PATH.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, them too. I was thinking World Economic Forum.
All of them. And
Yeah.
W.
Jay Gannon can't get a degree in wisdom. Credentialism is something we need to heal from.
Good. Yeah. Good way to put it.
Let's see. I'm just gonna scroll down. CNY Photo Video. 3 years ago, we all trusted the experts. That lasted about a month.
For some people, some
Yeah.
people are still.
Some people are
beating that drum somehow.
Eternally masking. Yeah. Andra Boudreau says, I'm thankful for the voices of these 4 very grounded people. I'm losing friendships right and left over gender ideology and wokeism. I won't pretend. I'm really sorry to hear that. That is really painful. And
you'll find friends.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many people out there.
Mm-hmm. And feel free to join us in our groups too, because we've got good people in there. Understand what you're going through. But thank you. We're grateful for you as well for being here and for all of you. Let's see. Yeah, House of Bad Influence says Andrew Boudreau. We're finding our real friends. Yeah, very good.
Who's Andrew Boudreau?
That is the person who had said that they are losing their friends. That they're grateful. So that was the last commenter. Yeah.
Oh, Andrew.
I know.
Come join us, Andrew. Come join us.
Yes. Let's see. Let's see. Cowardice equals short-term safety. House of Bad Influence. And Jay Gannon, personal responsibility, social responsibility, need both to evolve. Yeah, that's really important. I mean, I think that's the balance, right? It's not that you go and you ignore the herd and the group, but yeah, that's the big question. A silly pet rat. I lost 2 jobs over not getting the vax, and the city I lived in at the time wouldn't let you into most establishments if you didn't show your vax card. Sounds like Seattle, New York too.
It's one of those.
Yeah.
LA, Seattle, San Francisco.
Yeah, that's crazy. I'm sorry to hear that. That's really stressful. Jay Bourne, trust of intention is the most important thing to form a basis community to openly discuss things.
That's what we're trying to do. Solid ground.
Oh, and then here's one for you, Jody. House of Bad Influence. Wonder what kind of music Jody's into. Want to answer? Or
yeah, I mean my own, of course. I authentic music, honest, authentic music. We should do one on music. We
Yeah,
should talk about music more and art and like
that would be great.
how's
I think
about
we should.
influence? You should send me an email. You sound curious.
Networks.
JodyShaw.net.
Yeah. Andrew Boudreau says networks versus institutions. Interesting.
What did he say?
Networks versus institutions.
Yeah, that's a Jack Murphy thing. I don't know if you guys know Jack Murphy
Mm-mm.
on Twitter. He's like, the future is not institutions, it's networks. And if you think about blockchain, well, of course now it's being used, but we won't get into that. But networks, the internet's a network, right? Like they're not as fragile as institutions because they're not centralized. Anything that's not centralized is going to be more resilient and robust and stronger. And that's true for people as well. And we have the power now. We can have networks, very large ones if we want.
Interesting.
Here's an interesting comment. Rib Rascal says, we also need to talk as a society about the disproportionately female nature and influence of wokeness. It's toxic femininity in many aspects. Wokeness is disproportionately mean girls on their third glass of wine. I like that picture. That's really.
Yep. It's Chardonnay Antifa.
Chardonnay Antifa.
Chardonnay Antifa. Very good.
That's pretty good.
That came up on Benjamin's thing too. The toxic femininity, the feminine.
Well, he was talking about spinning it he sort of spun it in a positive way, like how females would pull us out of whatever.
If we can, if not, but for the toxic direction of femininity right now, like the positive direction of femininity could be very healing and very, very good working with the masculine. But
I think there's a lot to talk about there. I think that's a whole.
I think we should do a whole show or whatever, whole chat about that. There's a lot to that.
Yeah, we get into the trans stuff too there.
Gosh, that's like hours worth of discussion right there. All of that. Let's just read a couple more. And the devouring mother archetype Rib Rascal brings up. And then says Jacinda Ardern is the queen of the devouring mothers, empress of the dark matriarchs. It's a nice picture, but yes, I see what you mean.
Nicola Sturgeon a little bit as well. I'll just put
Sturgeon, Nicola Sturgeon, yeah. And a silly pet rat says, I agree with Jennifer, who checks the fact checkers about the corruption. Snopes. Oh my gosh.
Nope.
There's nope in Snopes. Jay Bourne, I never had faith in institutions. I will never have faith in institutions for the rest of my life. I have gone from an 80% trust to a 20% trust at best.
Wow. I'm right with I'm there as well.
Yeah.
Jen is too,
Says Friar Pestle says, I'm glad people are realizing that our reliance on institutions to be moral arbiters was misguided and lazy. In truth, we must decide right and wrong for ourselves and act accordingly.
And that means supposedly all institutions, not just the ones that cause the problem, but the ones who are like, we need to have skepticism of all institutions from here on out. That's what I think.
Is there like a place in which we need an equal and opposite sort of safeguard, which is to have things that represent our, the deep connections between us. So institutions that reflect history and art and culture, so that we don't go, right, everyone who's born has to start from scratch, justifying what it is they want to do. We still need something, don't we? We need something that's guiding as a guiding force, but to not be, what's the word? To not dictate, to not say, I guess that's the liberal secular project, but yeah.
That's a whole nother discussion. Because think about the music industry, like all we used to have record labels and like, God, and now we have the internet, right? Like supposedly everything's at our fingertips, but there's a whole lot of crap, right? So we have to sift through. So yeah, you think about museums and Wow, that's a fascinating topic, because then you get into the canon, and because that's also kind of gatekeeping too. But does yeah, we should do something on that.
Idea.
We
Good
should write a list
idea.
of these. We should have a list of these down, shouldn't we? Of like different topics. We're flying out with them.
I started a list. I'll start a list of top.
Bill Bob 7624 says, worship the creator, not the created. And CNY Photo Video says, I do have faith, but not necessarily in the traditional church institutions, but faith in God. And Rib Rascal says, yeah, it's a bummer. That's why I really enjoyed your, I think he's talking about laughter and humor here. Enjoyed your Instagram video this morning, Jody. Laughter is the best medicine.
Oh, yeah. I love it. We do need more laughter.
I know. It's so
we need
true.
to laugh more. Because if we're having fun over here and we're not woke, the woke they're fucking miserable.
Yes, they are.
Every step, like even in bed. So it's like, oh my God, those people are having more fun. Like they're naturally going to be like kind of curious. Like it's like, that's a human thing too. Like we want to have fun. We want to play. Like those people seem to be having a lot of fun. Like maybe I'm on the wrong side here.
Yeah. I mean, when you're tripping over every single word and you can't say the word lame, come on.
That's another hilarious sketch for our new comedy show, is what woke people are like in bed. I mean, that's
How do you act that out over Zoom?
Have to get together in person.
Yeah.
Shirts
will come off.
Oh no, again.
Oh no, sorry. Let's see, I'm just skipping down. And Nichama, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Thank you so much. Gives us a super chat, $10 super chat. Thank you very much. That's so nice. Says, a wise and discerning panel. Thank you for sharing your time, energy, and conversation. Well, thank you for sharing it with us. We're delighted. And this was such a great chat today. Thank you all for all of this just engagement. It's so awesome. I wish I could read everything out, but then we'd be here for a long time. And Jennifer has her group in 8 minutes, so we need to let her go. John Campbell, people have every right to be offended. They do not have the right to censor the offender. Yeah. Yep. And there were some great little comments here about Generation X, Gen X. That Gen X has been aroused finally. Yes.
Yay.
Yes. David, you're a millennial, aren't you?
Think so, yeah.
Well, then there's hope for the millennials. Oswald Spengler says, does Jody have any experience at UNC Chapel Hill?
Nope.
Why? All right. I wonder. Yeah. So I will, I'll leave that there. Somebody said my dog is a Roald Dahl fan. Mark Cavendish. Yeah, my dog is not a fan of the lady who's trying to garden outside right now, is what it is. So she's protecting me from the lady who's going to put beautiful flowers in the gardens.
Okay, so I started writing a list of potential topics for all of us, and if anybody wants to, like, if you start putting them in the chat for everyone who's watching, like, we'll try to. If there's a topic you want us to talk about,
please do. Yeah, we're happy to. There's so much to talk about.
And join us at solidgroundsupport.com.
Yep.
You can join the community for free, but it's $5 a month to participate in the peer group meetings.
So if they just join, they can sign up to locals for free and then just be in our locals chat. They just don't get the links to the meetings.
Which means, right, you don't get the links. It means you can see the content that's posted. You can't comment on it. So you can follow for free. But if you pay $5 a month, you can like interact with us on the locals platform, and also you have access to the group meetings. And there's 4 per week. You can come to all of them or just 1 or 2 of them. And it's a great way to meet other people who are talking about this stuff and trying to work it out.
Absolutely. Any final thoughts for today before we wrap up?
Go listen to some good music.
Jennifer, any final thoughts?
Listen to Andrew Bird. That's good music.
Andrew Bird. Pluck, pluck, pluck.
Oh, love him.
You like Andrew Bird?
Ugh, love him.
I will. I'm gonna listen to him then.
What about you, David?
Don't ask me to put a musician in the mix. I want to hear more Jodie Shaw's stuff, but maybe she'll give us a play on the piano at some point.
Oh yeah, maybe I will. This is a Korg. That's a little different, but yeah, I have I'm working on some pretty big projects, and I'm very close
cool.
to getting them out finally. And I think, yeah, after a couple years of floating around, not really understanding my purpose, I've returned to my purpose, which is music.
House of Bad Influence recommends that we listen to Ween. I second that. I love Ween.
Yeah, my kids love Ween.
Awesome. Well, Jody, I can't wait for your musical projects to come out. Looking forward to it, and looking forward to seeing all of you next week also.
It was great.